I'm going to show you how to make a copper trinket dish using the PotterUSA dish formers. You need to start with annealed copper, and I'm going to put a hammer texture on mine. This is a frets hammer, and it has a very narrow ball peen face. So my metal has been annealed, and I'm working over a steel surface. Here I have an anvil. You could also use a bench block. And I'm just overlapping my hammer blows so that I can get a really nice, even, consistent hammer texture on my metal. You can see I'm just slowly rotating the copper and repeating those hammer blows. I've sped this video up a little bit because over the entire piece, I'm going to spend about 30 minutes hammering. You'll notice your piece will start to warp. So it can be helpful to turn it over and use a dead blow mallet or like a plastic or rawhide hammer on the back to just tap down the high spots. And then just keep working away at it. It's gonna take a fair amount of time, but it'll give you a beautiful hammered texture. If your hammer starts to kind of bounce and you can tell the metal is becoming more and more stiff and hard to hammer on, you want to go ahead and take a break and anneal it. So here I've brought it over to my annealing station, and I'm using the torch to just bring the metal up to a dull glowing red. It doesn't need to be like cherry red, you just want a very dull glow. And you don't want to be fooled by the surface color that happens as the metal like heat patinas. You want to heat it beyond that surface coloration until the metal is actually glowing from heat. So here I'm getting pretty close. You can see as I move the torch away, there's like a red glow. If you shade it a little bit with your hand, you can see it better. And then I'm going to pickle and clean it and come back. And then I'll just start where I left off. So you can see I'm just working on the outer area of my piece of metal. And after annealing, the metal is nice and matte, and so it is helpful when you're planishing like this and hammer texturing. You can see where you've hammered because those marks become shiny. So it's easy to tell the difference where you've worked and where you haven't. And then remember that whole central area was done prior to the second annealing. So I'm just about done here. I'm just texturing that final corner. Now I'm going to make sure that everything that fits within the PotterUSA die is hammered. And now I need to go ahead and anneal again because I need the metal to be soft in order to form into that large silhouette die. So again, I'm using the torch to just heat the metal up to the proper temperature for annealing. And basically this relaxes all of those crystals in the metal structure that I've compressed while work hardening it and hammering it. So it's going to relax everything and make the metal nice and malleable again so that I can come back and form it without a lot of resistance. You can see that glow, and then I'll pickle and clean it. And now we're ready to come over to the hydraulic press and form it. So I want to pay attention to the hammered surface. I want the hammered surface to be on the inside of my dish, so I'm putting it face down. And I'm going to sandwich my metal between my urethane and my die, because the urethane forces the metal into the die. And by having the hammer facing the urethane, that means it'll be on the inside of my dish. So I'm just getting everything lined up and centered here on the lower platen. I'm going to add an additional spacer on top to make sure that that silhouette die gets pressed evenly. And then I'm going to go ahead and raise the jack. I'm just going to move it around a little tiny bit just to make sure that everything gets pressed evenly. and then press it a couple more times. So I can see that looks pretty good. I've got it to start forming. But I'm actually going to try a different durometer of urethane. So the first urethane durometer I used was 95, and this is a softer urethane. It's probably around 60 or 65, I'm not sure. It's just something I had lying around. So the softer the urethane, the lower the number, the faster and more it will push your metal. So let's see if this will push my metal a little further than that harder durometer urethane. Definitely looks like it pushed it a little bit further. I've got a deeper form to my die, or to my piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim just a little bit closer to the edge, and that'll help force the metal to kind of continue to form up into the die by trimming the edge. So I'm just using some tin snips. You can find these at a hardware store like Home Depot. And I'm just using those to roughly cut out off the edge, and I'm just barely leaving a small lip. And then I'll put it back in the press and form again. But first, we're going to anneal one more time. So again, I'm just going to heat with the torch, bring it up to that same annealing temperature. Okay, and then I'm ready to quench it, pickle it, let it clean, and then I'll pull it out of the pickle, rinse it again, dry it off, and go back to the press. All right, so I'm going to try pressing one more time. And another thing that you could do too to get a little more depth is to pack in some small urethane pieces in the center of that silhouette underneath your metal, and that would help force the urethane to push the metal a little bit farther in the center of the die. I'm just making a simple trinket dish, so it doesn't have to be super deep, but if you wanted it to be deeper, that's a suggestion I would try. So I'm just pressing it here. I'm gonna just move it a tiny bit, press again. Just want to make sure I get a nice even pressing. And then I'll pull it out and take a look. So I can tell it moved a lot farther that time. And now I'm ready to trim my edge. So this time I want a cleaner trim, so I'm going to go ahead and use my jeweler's saw. Make sure to lubricate your blade, that'll help you out a lot. And then you can just trim right up to the edge. If you're not as confident in your sawing skills, you could trim to just the outside of the edge, just leave a teeny tiny lip that you can then file to, and file to the very edge of the shape. But I'm cutting right to the edge of that impression. And then I'm ready to file, and the purpose of filing is I'm just smoothing out the saw marks, but also refining that edge if I didn't saw perfectly straight, just evening out that line. So you're going to do that on all edges. Make sure it's evenly filed and nice and smooth and you've removed all the high spots. And then I'm gonna sand, and I like to use these PSA discs from Rio Grande. They make sanding go a lot quicker, but you could just use, sandpaper or sanding sticks if you like. I just really like to use these PSA discs in the flex shaft because they speed things up a little bit. You just want to make sure, like any rotary tool generally, to keep it in motion so that you don't get low spots. And then here I'm switching to a silicone wheel just to further smooth out and refine that edge. I think it'll look really nice with a high shine on that edge. So I'm using this fine silicone wheel, and then as my very last step, I'll use a burnisher. I'm gonna go ahead and just sand a little bit on the edge of the back too, just to make sure everything's really nice and evened out. So now I'm gonna use a burnisher to burnish that top edge and make it really nice and shiny. It'll give it a high shine so that that edge catches the light. And it's just a really nice contrast to the hammered surface. And it just gives it a more finished look. And then to finish the back, I'm going to use just a coarse steel wool to kind of give it an overall kind of scratched matte surface. And the front is all good to go because I hammered that, and I used a very shiny faced hammer, and so that will take a really nice shine when I'm all done. So I'm just using this in a circular motion, giving myself a very even and consistent finish on the back. I'm going to go ahead and put a heat patina on this. And so the first step for that would be to go and clean my metal, make sure that it is free of any oil, grease, any dirt before doing the heat patina. So I'm going to use a soft brass brush and Dawn dish soap and just really scrub my piece good. Make sure it's very, very clean on both the front and the back. And then once it's clean, you want to only handle it from the very edges. You don't want to put any fingerprints on the surface because your skin has oil, and you may not see the oil right away, but if you do your patina, you could have fingerprints show up in a week or two if you're not careful, and that's really sad once you've put a patina on it and sealed it. So go ahead and handle it by the edges, make sure it's completely dry, and then we're going to bring it over to my annealing area, and I'm using a soft bushy flame, and I'm going to gently heat the entire piece very evenly. You'll notice I'm just doing this on my pumice. You could also do it on a soldering board, but you want to make sure it's a soldering board that's completely clean and free of flux, because we won't be pickling this. So you can see I've been heating very slowly. As soon as you start to see color, you want to be very careful. You're going to heat a tiny bit with the torch and then pull the torch away. And you can see how long the color continues to change after removing the heat, which is why you just want to heat very slowly like this, kind of do a once over, and then remove the torch and watch those color changes happen. It's really easy to blow right through the colors and make your metal black, which is not what we're going for here. So I kind of heat until I start to get this golden straw color. And then usually anything after this stage will stay. If you stop too early with the heat patina and then you go and seal the patina, a lot of times it'll disappear. But I'm really happy with this golden color the way it is, so I'm gonna stop there. But I could take it a little bit further and get some of those really nice pinks and blues. But make sure you get to this yellow stage first. And then I like to seal my metal with Renaissance wax. It's a microcrystalline archival wax. It doesn't yellow over time. For copper, that's not a big deal. You could also use like a Johnson's paste wax because the copper is already such a warm color. But if you're sealing like silver, I would use the Renaissance wax because it doesn't yellow. And then I'm just using an old paintbrush with very soft bristles to brush on a very thin layer of wax. Making sure not to touch the surface with my fingers. So I've just got a nice, even, consistent layer of wax on the front here. And then I'll turn it over and wax the back. So you can see the heat patina on the back looks different. I got some of those bright pinks. A heat patina will turn out different every time you do it, and that's part of the magic. And you can do it, and if you don't like it, you can pickle it and do it again and keep trying until you get something that you love. But anyway, I just spread a really thin coat of wax on both surfaces, and then I'm going to use this soft t-shirt rag to just wipe and buff all of the wax off. So I'm just gently rubbing, removing all of that excess wax. If you leave any wax on the surface, it will get like sticky and hard. It'll turn white, and it won't be what you want. So you want to make sure to remove it. All right, that looks pretty good. I have a beautiful heat patina on my hammered copper. And it's just got that gorgeous texture and that really pretty color. And that is my trinket dish.